Hi there. China banning our MPs. Labor kicks off its campaign for realsies. And National, can they still bank on the farmer vote? You're with the Maxim podcast on politics, Select Committee. Welcome, guys. Josiah, Thomas. Let's kick it off pretty quickly. 4 MPs banned from China for 1 year. How did that happen, Josiah? What's going on?
That's right. So the 4 MPs were part of a cross-parliamentary delegation. This is not something new. We've done it before. But they returned home to find that actually the Chinese had announced that they would be banned from Chinese territory for a year. However, they could, if they apologised, maybe they would have the sanctions removed, maybe cancelled, diminished. So the question is, well, why are they mad? Because we have MPs visiting Taiwan. What's the big deal? And it comes down to the one China policy. That's something we've had in place since 1972 when we opened diplomatic relations with Beijing. And basically the one China policy says that we recognize that China recognizes that Taiwan is an integral part of their nation. Now, that's not to say that we agree with that position, but we recognize that they think it's so. But it does mean that we do not have formal diplomatic relationships with Taiwan themselves. So anyway, these 4 MPs, they go over and China's not happy about it.
So it seems to be that the rules suddenly changed.
Well, it certainly seems that there is an escalation. This has happened before, and they're not happy about it. A couple of months ago in April, China said that the New Zealand Air Force had been harassing China for conducting reconnaissance missions under a UN sanction operation against North Korea, just making sure that the sanctions in place against North Korea, they're being abided by. So they didn't like that at all.
This is a huge compliment. If China is saying we have an air force, then things must be going pretty well.
Well, yeah, that's right. So China is becoming more aggressive. In December last year, Chinese fighter jets locked their radars onto Japanese aircraft. That's a sign of aggression. But it's not the only thing. Obviously, in our neck of the woods, we had a Chinese flotilla traverse the Tasman Sea, and they paused to do live fire drills. And this came as a bit of a surprise to all of us, because it did seem like a step up. We had no forewarning, and all of a sudden they were literally firing in waters where they hadn't ventured before. So we're just going to throw to a clip from 60 Minutes. Retired Colonel Grant Newsham, he has some things to say, some analysis to offer about that event back in February.
So this is a deliberate, aggressive show of force.
Yes. This is a very well thought out, well planned move with consideration of the political effects. And the Chinese conception of war is very different than ours. We don't see ourselves at war, the Chinese do. And to them, the shooting part is the last step. But the rest of it is this political warfare, the economic warfare, the elite capture, the propaganda, the psychological warfare.
So we're already at war with China?
Very much. Ask the Chinese, they'd tell you.
Oh, so we're already at war as China sees it, which is fascinating because Xi Jinping has been saying since 2018, get ready for war, both internally and externally to some degree. But this is actually, this corresponds with the escalation in that, in the Chinese view, things are already happening.
Yeah, and they see actions like this actually as a provocation.
And through the lens. So it's like, if you say we're at war, then if something like 4 Kiwi MPs go to Taiwan, well, boom, this is why we're doing this.
Yeah, and on that same 60 Minutes piece, a former PLA colonel, Joe Bo, offers this explanation for why they conducted these live fire exercises. And this is helpful for framing our thinking about, well, how do we understand actions like this?
It's not very friendly, is it, to show up and do live fire exercises? Why wouldn't China warn us?
Well, is it friendly that you have sent aircraft and ships so close to China? Yeah, to make all these provocations? Who did it first? Do not do unto others what you would not do to yourself, right?
Okay, so do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So what should we do unto them in your view, Thomas? I've got a view. What do you think?
Well, I think we face a relatively vicious problem. China is our most significant trading partner. We're incredibly dependent on them because they buy such significant amounts of our particularly dairy exports, but a range of other exports as well. And though China may be seeing this increasingly through a hostile military lens, we are not at war in a substantive sense yet. And so we sort of have to kind of walk softly without backing down, because we don't want to, grovel and apologize. New Zealand parliamentarians are free people. They can go to Taiwan, and crucially, they are not subject to the direction of the government. These are not government MPs. They are independent parliamentarians, so they should have that right to go to Taiwan if they so choose. But and we saw this with the responses from the Prime Minister and our Minister of Foreign Affairs. Not poking the bear unnecessarily, maintaining a staunch position, but, there is a risk in escalating.
And saving face is really important to the Confucian view of the world, for example. China started off as a Confucian nation. So I would say, I'm going to push back on that. I would say we don't need to grovel to China. So Winston Peters calls the ambassador in and gives them a rinse, and so does Luxon, and said, no, we're not at war, and you don't have the right to ban our MPs. So this is, and look, we love the economic relationship, but that doesn't legitimize some of this political maneuvering that you're doing.
Yeah, but I guess my pushback to that would be, no nation has more authority than it has power. If we offend, the Chinese state because we push back too hard, and they don't even have to sanction us or tariff us, but suddenly there are increasing, bureaucratic obstacles to some New Zealand exports. They sit in Chinese port 2 weeks longer than they ought to have. There could be real costs to our farmers now. And so there is a risk here, and we have to be willing to, if we're willing to escalate, recognize they may respond again.
That may explain why all we've done is lodged our concern about these developments.
But again, to acknowledge that, we can't then, take a step back either. We have to insist we have the right to do this, but then sort of very gently allow them to save face and say their stern warning to us. And
you look back, Australia, just after COVID, Scott Morrison said, there should be an investigation as to where COVID came from. It came from China, and Beijing didn't pick up the phone for a couple of years. So there is some history here. All right, well, let's keep moving, because Labor has kicked off its actual campaign. There's been the list announcement, which didn't go quite that well, and also a policy launch. Public transport is $20 if you live in the big smokes, like Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch. If you're outside of that, it's only $10. Let's just unpick this, because the actual announcement, let's do the policy stuff first. Is this a good policy, Josiah, or what do you think?
Well, it's certainly an appealing policy. I would call it a Labor lolly. Public transport costs are a real felt pain for people. If you're living in the city and you're travelling each week, it can be up to $50, and there is actually a $50 cap in Auckland at the moment. That feels quite a lot for public transport, which is often not on time, doesn't always feel safe. Might be a slow.
Bit dirty.
Might be a bit dirty. So you kind of think, $50 to get to and from work, that feels like quite a lot. $20 sounds a lot better, and it may actually encourage people to sort of maybe make that transition if they're on the fence. So certainly I think there's an appeal to it, but I guess there's possibly a political question about whether or not this is a good policy. But that being aside, certainly I think it's a good policy for Labor. I think it will certainly carry some favour with their support base.
Okay, as lollies go, Thomas, big enough and served at the right time?
Yeah, I think that timing question is going to be the big portion of it. I noted when Stuff ran the headline for the story, they kind of had Labour's long-awaited policy announcement. And so I think this announcement, it is a good lolly. It can fit into a speech nicely. But there's a risk that it suffers under the weight of too much expectation. If people were wanting more, it is a thing, but it's not kind of a big structural shift. So the high expectations could suffer from those.
It's like I wanted a peanut slab, and all you've given me is a jet plane.
Exactly. As a matter of policy, I think it's perhaps not as it's perhaps not as aspirational as they might like to think, and it risks not delivering what they really want to. So in 2022, in response to kind of the Russia-Ukraine crisis and then COVID was going on, public transport was half price for a period of time. So that gave us a really good, natural experiment for how do people respond to price shifts in public transport. And actually, what came out of that was that there was very little improvement in total rider numbers from public transport, because I think those other issues you guys named really are the challenges. People don't face a price obstacle to public transport so much as is it on time? Is it a pleasant experience? Does it feel like a worthwhile way to travel, or do you feel like you're having to suffer through it? So I think the bigger challenge for public transport in New Zealand is the quality of the service, not the price it's found at. So I'm relatively skeptical that improving the price of it will be a big structural shift to how many people take public transport.
Yeah, and in terms of, given the time poverty that so many of us experience, I think to have it occur on time regularly, that's the crucial sell. Let's go to the list now. Because there's a bit of a kerfuffle in regards of Rakesh Naidu, who's a fairly high up police officer, uncertainty about, they made the announcement that he was on the list. Then it's like, oh, wait, he's supposed to tell his employers because it's a political position. The police are apolitical. And then there was pushback from the police commissioner saying, actually, he didn't give us enough time. And also his position now is untenable. Christopher Hidkins is saying, no, he did tell his supervisor. It's just the supervisor's fault or someone's fault for not escalating quickly enough. Now we've got a review. The problem is that we're talking about this, Josiah, and not the actual list itself.
Yeah, so when you make an announcement, you want the focus to be about the announcement. How great is this? And this is really Labour's chance to say, we're bringing a new experience, fresh blood. This is not the Labour Party that lost the old election. This is a new one, and the list should represent that. And it really does set the direction for the election and the future of the party. But I think what's unclear to my mind is whether or not Rakesh has, I guess, broken police conduct, the code of conduct, because the idea is public sector neutrality. We don't want our public servants to be visibly aligned with a political party. This is really important for a democratic society like ours. And so he only recently, became a member of the Labour Party, and that's a very clear line across which you think, okay, so this person is now no longer politically neutral. So I guess my question is, well, does being in talk with Labour potentially for the last couple of months, does it breach that or cross that line where we go, actually, you've gone from being neutral to not neutral? And to my mind, I'm not sure. But either way, this is certainly a distraction that Labour would not have wanted.
Well, let's actually push through and do what Labour would like, which is evaluate the list. Thomas.
I think it's really interesting because Labour have managed to recruit some quite interesting candidates to kind of refresh their ranks. But the top tier of their list still looks pretty familiar, names that have been around for a while. So although they have attracted some new names, and Rakesh Naidu is actually ranked really highly at 13, but most of the other new recruits are pretty low down the list. The one that struck me and got a bit of news coverage is Craig Rennie, the chief economist at the Council of Trade Unions. So a relatively prestigious role, especially for a Labour candidate out of the trade unions. And he's an economist, he knows his numbers, he gives them a degree of credibility. But he's located all the way down at 51. So essentially that's not a winnable list position. He's got an electorate he's going to win, and it's basically his only road into Parliament. So there's possibly two reasons they've gone for that. The first is, okay, he's a bright, clever guy who's coming into the party, but put up or shut up. Can you win your electorate and carry the day? Otherwise, if you can't win an electorate, are you as good as your CV looks? But there's possibly also some political gamesmanship. So this was what was the Rongotai electorate is now Wellington Bays, and the Greens won that, and Labour will want it back. They don't want Greens to be a regular electorate-winning party, and so you give those voters no option. If Craig Rennie was ranked high on the list, they could be like, well, we'll keep our local Green candidate because we'll still get Craig Rennie in. But Labour haven't given them the option. If you want him in, you got to vote for him with your electorate vote.
So it's down to the people of Wellington Bays. They'll decide. Will you save Craig Rennie or send him back to the CTU? Up to you. Let's move to Fieldays. Yep. The farmers of New Zealand are getting together, standing around in their swan dries, having a few yarns, sipping a bit of good strong tea. We've got a rural correspondent with us, Thomas. What are your rural credentials? Pretty strong.
Oh, very, very strong. I mean, I grew up in a suburb, but I could smell silage from my house if the wind was blowing at the right direction at the right time of year. But so I grew up in Hamilton, and field days is kind of a big deal, because you could skip school. I think some schools had teacher-only days during field days because attendance was so bad. But basically, it's a big farming trade show, kind of get everyone together when the cows have dried off, and so all kind of rural adjacent businesses show up for a big hullabaloo, and it becomes this important bit of political theatre as well, because all the political parties want to be there to show that we like the farmers, and hopefully the farmers will like us.
Because the farmers are doing well at the moment. I mean, dairy is going gangbusters. Wool. Fill us in. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, so wool price, 15-year high. And I think that's a really significant move because dairy is doing well, but dairy has probably had a strong couple of decades, so they're doing really well now, but that's a consistent trend. But wool has had a hard run of it, but has really bounced back because of the global wool price. So there is much more optimism there than there has been for a number of years. And so then it becomes a crucial kind of thing for politicians to capitalize on that. So for government MPs at the moment, it's coming in and saying, you guys are feeling good because of us. Now, the extent to which they can claim credit for that, it's a little bit dubious, but you want to be seen next to kind of things that are going well and pretending you've done the really the hard work. And then for opposition MPs to come in and also try and get a little bit of that optimism.
Question. National has been historically able to rely on farmers to vote for them. Still able to make that bet, bank that vote? What do you think?
So they're really facing an increasing challenge there because you're right. National would very much see themselves as the natural party for farmers to vote for. But ACT have made a sustained campaign to move in on that vote, particularly with their recruits. So Mark Cameron, who is just having to step back from Parliament for health reasons, but he's been significant for ACT. And then Andrew Hoggard, these kind of clearly rural-coded MPs who are speaking to the regions. So ACT are wanting to move in a little bit there as well. But we also had this interesting moment just recently where Federated Farmers were launching their campaign asks, and their spokesperson had some very complimentary things to say about Labour.
But our investment there, I mean, we meet with the Labour Party now every year. A credit to Chris Hipkins, who has come on farm with us 3 years in a row now and has understood what farmers are going through. I'll give the example of our first meeting with them where he brought top 10 of their leadership along. We talked about farming issues, and I remember getting to morning tea and thinking, oh, we're going to have to scale this back here. The knowledge around farming was quite different to where we thought we were going to go.
Yeah.
I compare that to 3 years on. He stood in front of our National Council at Federated Farmers and he talked for 45 minutes without notes, without anything, around farming issues and exactly what was coming at us, taking questions from the floor. Now, if that's where we've moved our relationship with the Labour Party from 3 years ago to where it is now, that's a credit to what's happened, and we're confident that it'll bode well should they get over the line come November.
Wow, there may be a new sheriff in town. What do you make of that, Josiah?
Well, I think that's a significant development for Labour and a real win. The last Labour administration, I think, would be characterised by many farmers as anti-farmer, and certainly in the recent Q&A interview that Jack Tame did with a representative from Federated Farmers, he basically said, well, all of your policy asks or recommendations have been implemented by this government, and those policies, those proposals really did centre around making farming easier, more productive, and so when you come up with these real frustrations where your work comes up against legislation, I mean, you're going to want to vote for the party that makes your job easier, not harder, and certainly traditionally National's held that spot. But if Labour's catching up, then I'm not sure National can be so sure that that is a safe vote.
Well, that would be a real turnaround in the sense that, say, National becomes a more urban/metropolitan party and Labour becomes the stalwart of the gumboot wearers. Thomas, you're smiling. Can you see that?
Yeah, well, we'll see how they go there. Certainly, I think it's really good that they've done the hard work because, as much as there are all these policy debates that matter, farmers have had concerns about regulation and a number of government policies, there is just this deep sense that it's hard to vote for someone you don't feel likes you. So, if you're a real estate agent, it would be hard to vote for the Green Party because you get a feeling that the Greens do not like real estate agents, right? And, you could say... Other things are equally true for people on the political left. If you're a student, protester, it's probably hard to feel like New Zealand First really says nice things about students who attend protests, right? And so for Labour, there'll be all these policy debates they have to work through. Do farmers actually want their policies? But that crucial first step of showing up on farms, showing up to field days and say, we see you, we get your concerns, and we like you, is actually a really important first step.
Which is why they're there. All right, let's move to Fantasy Beehive. This is the segment where we each pick 3 politicians and we see how they do based on how they perform in the House and also how they perform in the media. Josiah, who did you pick and why?
Yeah, so my standout performer was Christopher Luxon. He got a number of headlines this week, so really strong media performance, and those headlines were really around his trip to Australia. Even the chat around New Zealand's nuclear policy, whether that's positive or not, I would probably think it is positive, because I think there is a knee-jerk sense that we want to keep our nuclear policy the way it is, and so that's what he was saying, so a win there. But also had Ricardo Menendez-March. I think he's got great style. He looked a little bit like me on Herald Now last week, so I thought I'll pick him. And then Hipkins as well, so those were my picks.
Okay. What about you, Thomas?
My picks are pretty quiet this week, and normally we talk about strong performers, but gaffes can make it through as well. And so I had Martima Davidson on my lineup, and she had the slight gaffe of uploading a video to social media of her speeding. She was talking to a camera trying to get policy cut through, but she was doing 120 on a 110 road, so not ideal. In the long run, does it matter? Almost certainly not. And, those of us who have never done 120 on a 110 road can cast the first stone, but certainly not ideal when you're trying to talk about the issues.
It's an $85 fine.
Do you know from experience?
I picked for my politician...
Didn't answer the question. He is a politician.
Simeon Brown. He was. I picked a couple of other guys, but he was my main one for this week. Incredible that he has 2 enormous portfolios, health and energy, and we add to that the national campaign chair. So incredibly busy. He was fronting the announcement of the LNG terminal, continue with the terminal, removing the levy on electricity companies. Also wanting to get more patients in through into the health system. I think that's resonated very well. More widely, I heard an interview. He was interviewed, and then on a talkback station, people actually, I quite like Simeon Brown. So I hadn't expected to like the health minister. Those are words actually that you don't hear as often as you would imagine. He's very direct. He's got great focus. So that's he was my major pick this week. So Josiah, how do we do?
So Tim, you scored 5 points.
Is that good?
Thomas scored 7 points. And I scored 13. So
this is back-to-back weeks.
So Tim, I know you had a good run, but a new king is here. So we'll see whether the streak continues.
All right, well, I will certainly be bowing down to the new king after we go off air, but we'll see you again next week. Thanks for the eyes and ears. Keep watching.